Welcome back to Family Tabletop. My name is Nate. Lately, I've been trying to figure out what has been going wrong in our tabletop game nights. We've been playing on and off for almost 2 years, but our game group has struggled repeatedly, just over and over and over again. Players not showing up, people being disinterested, me being disinterested. A couple weeks ago, I had the thought, maybe we should just play board games. So I took some time and wrote down all my thoughts about low prep dungeon mastering. I've written them down, and I'm going to read them. So just stick with me. I'm going to throw up some images here while I'm reading through this thing. When we get to the end, maybe you'll understand what I have been experiencing as a dungeon master with a gaming table. Again, these things that I'm expressing are my thoughts and my opinions about my own game, and they don't necessarily have to apply to you. Please take that into consideration when you listen to me ramble on. When I first started dungeon mastering, I protected my players a lot. I protected their characters as well, but that isn't what I'm talking about. I mean, I protected my players. I didn't really expect them to learn the games we were playing or learn how to play their characters. I was so desperate to have people just willing to play D&D with me that I didn't set high expectations for my players. None of my players believed that they could run the game, so it was established early on that I would be the forever DM, which meant it was my responsibility to make sure some aspects of the game were getting prepared each week before game night. I quickly learned that preparing for Dungeons & Dragons games was one of the more difficult aspects of the game. I would set up an entire map, but then the monster would die in the first round, or my players wouldn't even go fight that monster. It was really difficult for me to account for the things that players might do. So instead of preparing, I decided to start making things up in the moment.
It just sounded cool. I literally just made it up right now looking at the map. I was inspired. This is adventure design, folks. It never really gets more complicated than this.
There's a reason Matt Colville teaches this lesson in an introductory dungeon mastering video. I was playing Baby's First Dungeon Master. I was making it up as I went. An incongruent idea began forming in my head. You see, I knew that I was making stuff up in our game, but I also held the belief that my players couldn't do this nearly as well as I could. I took it as a point of pride. I'm a rather good dungeon master. But what if my players don't want to be the person who has to pretend the hardest that our whole story makes sense? No, it's not that, I thought. I'm actually the best at pretending the hardest. As this thought began to settle into my mind, I lowered my expectations for my players even more. I lowered the bar so much that I actually began to lose respect for the people I played with. I came to see my players as freeloaders, because in game terms, I knew that I was carrying them. I ran the game for them. I am the forever DM. And this mindset began to manifest in our games. See, I already knew that I was babying my players in real life, so I started babying their characters in our games as well. I secretly knew that they knew nothing about the worlds they're playing in, and even if they did know something, I could still change that at the last moment for dramatic effect. One of my players killed the monster, but I decided to give that kill to a different player who hasn't gotten a kill in a while, plus 5 hit points to the monster. It's my world after all. I was making up so many things in the game that it became difficult to remember exactly what was going on in my world. Oh well, I'll just eavesdrop on my players and change the world a little bit into the way that they want it to go. Players really like to get their way after all. I couldn't escape the knowledge that this world we were playing in was stupid. I knew that my world design was incongruent, even if my players didn't know that. This knowledge left me feeling frustrated about the story of our game. I was having trouble coping with the fact that nothing in my world made sense, since I was making up so much of it in the moment as we played. No, you cannot attack the airship balloon with your knife, because the airship actually flies with a resonance chamber and it's made of metal, and still I continue to protect my players. But now I'm protecting them from the knowledge that we've been playing in a game world that I make up each week. And I would continue protecting them all the way up until the moment when I begin to dominate. When I start to sense that my players aren't paying attention to my game, I just give them a random encounter and pretend like it was all part of the plan. Are they catching on? Well, I dominate. We're changing game systems or starting a new campaign. Every time we start over, I can start protecting them all over again, and the cycle continues. I learned to pivot exceptionally well between dominating and protecting my players. I start them in a brand new campaign, and this time I pick a rules-light, lore-light system. If the game setting has no actual lore, well, that means I get to be the sole provider of world knowledge. Players tell me something they want to do, and I tell them yes or no. Or yes and, or no but. And since we're playing in a lore-light world, I am the only one who knows how this world works. It's a very difficult job being a dungeon master. I have to be the one who decides what gets to be made up on the spot and what doesn't. I have to be the one who breaks the rules, in case I need to protect my players. All the while we are playing, I hold the belief that my players don't actually like tabletop RPGs, which is why I continue to treat them like children in the game. They couldn't figure out a mystery that I made up on the spot, so I make up an NPC to explain the whole thing to them. I am wholly convinced that my game group might end at any point. For some reason, my players and I do not have an equal level of interest or dedication to this game that I have been making up each week. I'm equally split. Some days feeling worried that my players will flake and miss our game. Other days, I'm worried that I might be stuck with players who do not actually like to play tabletop RPGs. They are often late or absent or using their phones during the game. Despite their continued disinterest, I relax a little bit, because I know that I am the one who pretends the hardest that their choices matter in a game where everything is arbitrarily decided by me. I am the host. I am the one who learns and runs the game. They decided a long time ago that I am the forever DM. There is no way that they could be the ones who determine what's allowed to be made up in the moment. I think dungeon mastering would be too hard of a job for them. And the reason I think this is because I'm the one who constantly protects them from the games we play. We started playing in more lore-light, rules-light systems because I find it much easier to protect and dominate my players when there are fewer rules or restrictions dictating to me what I'm allowed to do in my game worlds. While we were playing in these rule-light, lore-light systems, something terrible started happening. My players' town was destroyed utterly, and many of their favorite NPCs were killed. But one of my players was on their phone through part of the fight, and on Zoom, I saw one of my best players had walked away from their computer. I don't think my players care about the world. I started to wonder, what am I doing wrong? I listened to the great Dungeon Master advice. I learned how to make stuff up in the moment really well. This is the thing that the experts had told me to do. Just make it up, just make it up, just make it up. I heard it over and over and over again. Actually, no, you've never seen an elf like this before, I say as I begin to think about something strange and un-elf-like. Some characteristic, maybe a little limp. I learned how to build a character out of a quirk, quickly. Why don't they care about the town that was destroyed? Did my players think that my NPCs had shallow personalities? Well, to be fair, I was trying to make these things up in the moment, and it is really hard to invent an interesting character in a matter of seconds. When I was trying to prepare the game too much, things would go off the rails that I had set. But when I don't prepare enough, my players lose interest over time. Or the game gets too silly and then everyone loses interest. What do these players expect me to do? I think to myself. I have now pivoted into abdication. The incredibly low expectations I had set for my players have now all been met. All I have left is apathy. Maybe we should just play board games on game night. But before I make this apathetic place my home, I'm going to ask myself a few critical questions. What if my players aren't able to make it over the low bar because I never actually let them play the game? I genuinely do not know if my players actually like tabletop RPGs because I've been shielding them from playing one for such a long time. I know that I have shuffled enemy stats and fudged dice. I have swapped NPCs and spawned NPCs and invented character connections in the moment. What if my players suspect that I might be making things up because I literally am making up things in the moment? What if they've figured all this out? I begin to suspect that my players have realized their choices do not matter in a subjective world that exists only in my head. It's my headcanon world. Sure, I can allow you to shoot that bad guy, but I'll decide if he dies or not. I think they've figured it out, but they just don't know how to explain the problem to me. Like a television show that just lost its flair, they suddenly don't care to play the game anymore. But even if I did all the preparation that I could, their choices still wouldn't matter because their choices are not informed by world knowledge. Their characters know nothing about the world except what I make up in the moment. And since what I make up in this week is often different from what I make up next week, they don't know how to care. Obviously, I don't want to continue abdicating, but how do I actually liberate my players so that I am no longer protecting them or dominating them? They need to know something about my world. My players need a clear understanding of their characters, what their characters know, how their characters would feel, what their characters want. If they knew more about what their characters know, they might become excited for the parts of the story where their character is either well-informed or well-suited for a task. If they know how their character feels about another NPC, then the relationship won't just be about funny voices and quirks. Is it possible that I could actually liberate my players by simply giving them more information about their characters? Is it possible to liberate them by raising the expectations for our game night? I've been thinking about all of this for a few weeks now. Hello, my name is Nate, and this is Tabletop Family, my YouTube channel. Our family game night has struggled over the last 2 years, and during this video, you've heard me talk about our family's game night experiences. Everything that I've said in this video is an expression of my own thoughts and feelings about running a consistent family game night. I'm not trying to tell you how you should feel about your games. I'm telling you how I feel about mine. 3 weeks ago, I explained to my players that I believed our game group was being plagued by several issues. I wanted to increase their agency as players by playing in a game that teaches them about their characters. I told them that I suspected if they knew more, they would be better informed to play. They would know more about how to play in a game world that we share together. Last Friday, we played in a new, lore-heavy game that has not yet been released. We had our best session ever. My players understood what their characters would want, feel, and need because the setting of this game had informed them all so well. The campaign I prepared for my players was a mystery, a sandbox mystery in a town called Swampfurt. My players' characters have full control and freedom of choice in the narrative as it unfolds. I was worried in this style of preparation that my players might feel railroaded, but they told me they do not. My experience with low prep dungeon mastering has taught me that I do not like being a low prep, lazy dungeon master. I do not actually enjoy dungeon mastering when I know that I am making everything up, while I am also hoping that my players won't notice I'm making everything up or hoping that they won't care that I do. It has taken me a few months of time playing in low prep games to figure out my own thoughts about low preparation dungeon mastering. This experience has been very helpful to me, but I know that it has been a trial for my players. To all my players, thank you for being patient with me through our game nights, the ups and downs, and the struggle that I've had learning how to be a good dungeon master. I know as a player, when I come to a table, I come there with a desire to suspend my disbelief. I want to know that some of those leads that I'm being given are real. They were prepared in advance. They're not just spawned in the moment. With that understanding, with that knowledge that that is what I would prefer as a player, it's very difficult for me to continue giving my players something that I wouldn't want. I wouldn't want to play in a world where everything was made up. I wouldn't want to play in a world where the NPC connections were shallow. I would want to play in a world with some depth, with some connectivity, with a mystery that is underlying, something beneath the surface, something that tells me this is more than just ideas that a dungeon master has spawned in an instant. And since I know that about myself as a player, I know that I can't just give my players everything being made up. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching this video. My name is Nate. This is Family Tabletop. If you like this video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to the channel. I try to put out videos pretty consistently every week, some like this that are edited and some that are just me rambling to the camera. A lot of the videos I put out are me asking questions when I come to a problem in games I like to learn. And other times I'm giving my thoughts and opinions about something I've experienced while playing the game, just like this video here. God bless you. Have a good day.